So today I'm going to talk about my answer about the interview. My first reaction when I heard the instruction was shock. This happens because the exams are usually conducted by answer questions or project that prepared by lecture. However, now students were asked to create their own questions and answer them. Because of this, I felt happy because I was given freedom to complete these tasks without pressure like doing a normal test. I felt challenged because I had to think twice as much as usually. Previously, I only focused on finding the correct answer to the questions provided by the lecturer. Now, I also think about how to create well designed questions. However, I am confident that I can complete these tasks because I believe the experience will give a positive impact on me in the future. I'm confident that I can create questions about the conditional sentence because I have previously studied about the material, its type, and example of its use. In addition, I'm currently taking a language testing and assessment course which helped me understand how to design a good test. Therefore, I feel capable of completing the task of creating the questions. The biggest challenge I faced was connecting the real life context with the equation created so that both look coherent. In addition, I had to ensure that every sentence I wrote followed by the correct grammar rules. This process requires me more precision and effort than simply answering questions. My first step was reviewing the pattern and the material about the conditional sentence or direct and indirect speech to ensure that my understanding was still aligned with the concepts. After that, I determined the student competence level and the total of the questions to be graded. Then I constructed conditional sentence or direct and indirect speech questions by paying attention to grammar rules, vocabulary, and coherence between parts. Yes, I realized it. While creating questions, I realized that grammar is not only about memorizing rules, but also understanding the context in which they are used. By creating questions, I became more careful about small grammar details that I often ignore when I only read the textbook. Therefore, I realized the importance of applying grammar rules in both writing and speaking so that I can become more familiar with using grammar correctly. In my opinion, answering questions and creating questions are two different activities. When answering questions, I only focus on finding the correct answer. On other hand, when creating questions, I have to develop an appropriate context, make sure the grammar is correct, and provide the correct answer key. Therefore, creating questions is more challenging because it requires both analytical thinking and creativity at the same time. I will give a score 7.5 to the questions I created. Actually, I'm quite confident about quality of the questions, but I realized that there are still many weaknesses. In addition, the questions haven't reviewed or received feedback from more experienced people such as lecturer, teacher. Therefore, I believe that the questions still need improvement and development. While writing these reflections, I recalled my learning process, the difficulties I faced, and the skills that I have already mastered. I realized that evaluating myself objectively is not easy. This happens because self evaluations is often influenced by thoughts and feelings that tend to be subjective. However, the reflections process helps me recognize my strengths and weaknesses so that I can continue to improve my skill. In my opinion, reflections is an important part of the learning process. After completing a learning activity, there will naturally be areas of mastery and areas that still need improvement. Through reflections, students can identify their strengths and weaknesses, allowing them to continue to develop themselves better in the future. When doing on questions made by lecture, I usually focus on finding the correct answer based on the grammar rules that have been learned. My thinking process is focused on analyzing answer choices and applying appropriate formulas. However, when creating my own contextual context, I have to think more broadly. Furthermore, I find the text more challenging than simply answering the questions. This happens because I'm not just thinking about the correct answer, but also how to create realistic questions that effectively measure grammar understanding. In addition, this experience made me better understand the relationship between grammar and real world communication. I realized that grammar is not just a set of rules to memorize, but a tool to conveying meaning clearly. In that process, I also learned how to consider context, the purpose of communications, and the potential mistakes other learners might make. Therefore, creating contextual questions help me understand grammar more deeply than simply completing questions provided by the lecture.